Hey, it's Dan, and welcome to Unified Gaming. So for today guys, we are going to be looking at the Cyrodiil test, the Vengeance campaign. This is a test that started on the 24th of March and it lasts 1 week, and it's a significant change to how Cyrodiil feels and plays. It's a whole change of class skills, sets disabled, core sets of stats for each player, and so on and so on and so on. There's a lot of changes. In this video I want to break it all down for you, but more importantly show you the skills and what actually works. I've been playing this mode for the past 6 hours on stream, and I'm recording this at the end of the stream, showing every build that I've made, what is the best min-max options that you can make with this campaign, and also to kind of just give you a quick tier list of where they are all in relation to each other, because a lot has changed. As always, if you like what I do here, then like, comment, share and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. And I want to say a massive thank you to everybody who do support me on YouTube membership or Patreon. They get early access and much more. If you want to do that, there's details down below. For the campaign though, what is changing in Cyrodiil for this week? And more importantly, why? So in the PCNA and the PCEU service, there's a new campaign called Vengeance. And this campaign is a limited engagement focus on performance testing of the abilities in large scale combat. What this means is that they are trying to see how can they fix the lag. Now I can't say this is antidotal, this is like the best thing ever, but in my experience for the past 6 hours when I've been streaming it, as well as the couple hours before that, I had no issues. I was fighting in 200 people fights with zero lag. I was using my skills, I was able to roll, I was able to actually do damage. It was significantly better performance wise. The obviously question you're probably wondering though is what changes to make it work. One of the big changes is that every class, regardless of whether you're a Nightblade or a Sorcerer or a Templar, regardless of race, whether you're CP 600 or CP 1, it doesn't matter, you have these stats. So every single person will have 70,000 health, 30k magicka, 30k stamina, 2.2k mag regen and 1500 stam regen. They've got 5k of each damage and 33% crit chance, with 16k resistances and 1600 crit resist. All of your attributes are disabled, your Mundus Stone is disabled, and on top of this, all of your sets are disabled, including the item traits. They do give you access to just a range of stuff here, so if you want to change your weapon type you can, and it is worth stressing that just because you use a two-handed melee weapon doesn't mean you do more damage with melee skills. So in my experience you are better using staffs or ranged weapons because they hit just as hard and they have a ranged attack. On top of that, all of the skills for damage are mainly magicka. You can heavy attack for magicka with these, so that's just a little tip there. The other thing you might notice is that there's no battle spirit. So what this means is that when you come into this campaign, whatever your tooltip shows, so for example here 15,000 heal, if I use this I will get a 15,000 heal. Now you will see that I can't spam it, so they have made some changes to these and they can crit. So whatever you see on a tooltip is what you'll get. 15750, 15750. This is also true for damage. So this is 11,000 roughly. On a player after their armor I'm doing about 9,000. So the whole reducing the damage by 50% and then armor and stuff that's not there is simplified. Further to that, they've also limited all of the skills you can choose, so you can only access the class skills and nothing else. You might also be tempted to go, do poisons work? The answer is no, I have tried this. And they also give you access to an unlimited tri potion, which is amazing. Like, please keep this forever, it's amazing. But that's kind of the big changes along with CP disabled. What this means is the build options are significantly limited, and it comes down to mainly the skill slight differences and player difference. So if you're in the same class as another player, it comes down to who's better. It does also mean though that the gameplay feels slightly different. So that's kind of the just general overview of what's changed, what's different. I now want to go through and show you the builds that work really well and a quick tier list. So this will be a slightly longer video, but just bear with me. For the Sorcerer, The best build I found, having used this for well over a couple hours, is Crystal Shard, Rune Prison, Conjured Ward, Surge, Bolt Escape and Overload. On the back bar you have Lightning Form, Daedric Cursed, Bound Armour, Unstable Familiar, Dark Exchange and Storm Atronach. What this gives you is access to a really good delayed burst skill with Curse, which means you can then switch to your front bar. You can then hit them with Rune Prison, which is a delay, cast Crystal Shard, Light Attack, and then cast Overload, where you have to actually activate this whilst looking at the target. And what will happen is Curse will blow up, Crystal Shard will hit them, they will get stunned, Overload will hit them, and a Light Attack will hit them. And you can do a lot of damage by doing this combo. So this is really, really good. What this means is that Sorcerer is the most bursty class in this mode. It has the most amount of damage if you combo correctly. For survival wise, you want to use Hardened Ward or Conjured Ward in this case. It's a big shield, it's basically just a pseudo burst heal. And then you've got Surge as a big heal if you do need extra healing. On top of this, it gives you bonus damage with Berserk if it's on this bar, so you want this front bar, because any damage you do from the back bar, if you put Curse on and you swap over, the damage will update and will take into account the minor Berserk. For the other damage skill, we also have Unstable Familiar, which is just a damage over time. And rather than having to have it follow around, you just cast this and it chases them and it hits them. For additional healing, we use Dark Exchange. This becomes our main heal. So if we are in a situation where we need to keep kiting, we will just keep jumping around like this. And we've also have access to Streak as well. So this is how we stay alive. Lightning Form is simply an armor buff, there is no speed boost on it. And then Bound Armor is the Major Protection, which is a loads of damage reduction still. We then pair this off with Storm Atronach on the back bar. But that there is the best Sorcerer build that you'll get, having tried all of the options for like 1vx. If you want a dual and 1vx, this is the best setup. For group play, you can add in a few group sort of skills. So for example, the Familiar is good, the Curse is good, the Twilight is good for group healing. You have from the Storm, the Lightning Splash is good for just AoE damage. But in all honesty, you are better just running this setup. So that there is the Sorcerer, guys. I'm now going to quickly switch character, and I will show you the next class, give you kind of the pros and the cons with it, and then also what is the best skill loadout. And as I said, all of the stats and stuff are exactly the same regardless of build. So the next class we're going to go on to is the Nightblade. So the Nightblade in this test is your assassin. It is your rogue, your stealthy boy. It's trying to go in and out and hit people really hard and do lots of damage. The downside is that you are normally squishier, but with the changes you actually are just as survival and as defensive as other classes. If you add in the mobility and the invisibility, you can stay alive a lot longer and in more situations than you probably should do versus other characters. So that's really worth stressing. On top of this, Nightblade is more of a higher damage class than some of the other ones, and it is a primarily melee class. So we're going to again go back into Cyrodiil, and I'm going to show you some of the changes. One of the big things I want to stress is I have tried to make a range mag blade, so where we're trying to use range damage skills, and Nightblade just cannot do it. So what you will see is that when we come into our skills, the ranged options only do 5,000 damage, whereas the melee options do 10,000. What this means is that when you're using range in group, you are going to do significantly less damage. It is meant to be as a damage heal skill with the emphasis on the healing. This means you cannot really be doing a lot of damage at range reliably. As such, I've built this, having played it loads, to be more of a melee damage dealer, and I've had the most success with this. With the skills we've access to here, these are the best options. We have Veiled Strike, which is our spammable for melee. We have Teleport Strike, which is our gap close. This lets us teleport to the target and then damage them with Veiled Strike. We then have Aspect of Terror, which stuns them, and it also drops their block. So this is really useful, as we can do Teleport Strike, Veiled Strike, Aspect of Terror, back into Veiled Strike, and then that will land and they can't do much to avoid that damage. We then have Shadowy Cloak, which is a invisibility. It has been changed for this mode, so when you cast it, it lasts 3 seconds and then turns off with a 4-second cooldown. This means that you cannot have this up forever, and on top of this, you do get a bit of healing. We then have Grim Focus. This is a burst skill. Previously, you have to do 5 light attacks. They've now taken this away, and it just charges. In 5 seconds, you can shoot it. So every 5 seconds, you can fire this, and this hits incredibly hard. So this is a really good damage skill. You often typically want to do Teleport Strike, into Veiled Strike, into Aspect of Terror, and then into Grim Focus. For the ultimate, we are using Deathstroke. This is an execute. So this will do 200% more damage, or up to if they are below half health. So when you use this when they're low health, you can do 30,000-40,000 damage with this. It's a very good skill. If you hit them at high health, it does very little damage. So all in all, you want to save this for when they are low health, where you want to try and execute with a Deathstroke into Veiled Strike roll dodge. That will kill a lot of people. On the back bar, we have Blur, which is our armor buff and minor evasion, so we take less damage. We have Vengeance Offering, which is a burst heal. One thing to note with all the burst heals from here on out is when you use them, they will target and focus on any person that you are looking at, even if you don't want it to go on them. And it will seek allies over you, even if you're low health. So there have been times where I've been at 10,000 health, and I use this, and because somebody's nearby in front of me, they get the heal, even though they're at full health. So just be really careful with heals from this point onwards in the video. We then have Cripple, which is a damage over time, and a Snare. This is really good because it makes them slower, so we can move faster against them. We then also have Path of Darkness, which gives us a big movement speed. Nightblade is the only class that have access to this buff. You can give this to allies as well, so this is a really good group skill. We then have Mark Target, reduces the target's armor by 6,000. This is the only class with this currently. This is a big damage boost, and you can put this on multiple people and it lasts 20 seconds. This is a really good skill to use. For the ultimate, we have Soul Shred, which is a big AoE hit everybody. It's decent damage, it hits 3 people, it's a good oh no button. But all in all, having played Nightblade extensively on stream, you are welcome to check the gameplay. This is what I'd recommend running. As for our next class, we're going to go and have a look at the Warden. The Warden is a DLC class, which means you do need to have access to Morrowind. That said, Source have given this out in the past, so do keep an eye on just the store and stuff that sometimes comes up for free. And the Warden itself is a jack of all trades. So what the Warden does is it does everything incredibly well, but not one thing amazingly. So the way in which you want to use your Warden is you want to double down on a supportive player, where you're trying to help your teammates to stay alive and also do damage and help in the fight. But by doing that, you will acknowledge that you will have less killing power as a result. That said, you become incredibly good for group play because you have lots of heals, some of the best heals at the moment, and you are incredibly fast with access to range immunity, which means you can take very little to no range damage should you wish. All in all, it becomes a really good all-rounder, just lacks that killing power. The other thing to also note with Warden is that they have changed some of the skills. So when you do go in there, you will notice that the bear and some of the summons, like the Sorcerer, are not permanent. So what this means is that when you use your bear, for example, it pops out of the ground like Celine's does and hits people. This is what I found to be the best damage dealer all-round build that you'll find in this mode. We are using Dive. This is a spammable that can't be dodged. It does 10,300 damage. We have Scorch, which is your AoE. It hits every 3 seconds. So you push this down 1, 2, 3, it pops up. You can do it multiple times. You have to recast it, so there's no double cast like it is on live. You then have Swarm, which is just a damage over time. You have Betty, which gives you Major Berserk, so it's a damage boost and it costs 0, so this is really good. Falcon of Swiftness, this is a movement speed buff. This class and Nightblade have access to this buff, with the Warden having it for the longer duration, so you can use this and sprint to get away from people really quick. You can, however, be snared, so just do factor that in. For the ultimate, we have the Feral Guardian. This hits really hard and it does up to 100% more damage if they are below 25% health. The issue is though that 25% health is around 17,000 health, and you'll see that if you land, for example, Scorch with a light attack, you're going to do about that anyway and kill somebody, or even dive with a light attack and a bash, you're going to do enough to kill them in most cases. As such, this really shouldn't be focused as an execute. If you can get it as an execute on them and they're low health, great, but 9 times out of 10 this is just here as bonus damage. So what you want to do is do your Deep Fissure, so Scorch into light attack dive with the Feral Guardian. You'll find the Feral Guardian does have a bit of a delay that doesn't show on the tooltip, so you're better off going with Scorch into Feral Guardian and then into dive. For the back bar, we use Ice Fortress or Ice Cloak as our armor buff. Arctic Wind is our big burst heal, so this is 15,000, and with a buff it goes up to 18,200, so this is a really good self heal, one of the best ones in the game for this mode. We have Living Vines. This is one of the best heal over times. There are very few heal over times that you can get access to. This is incredibly good and it can go on allies. We then have Crystallized Shield, which makes us immune to ranged attacks. It's expensive but good. And we have Lotus Flower, which gives us more healing power, and it also increases our crit as well. So what this means is that we crit more and we also have more healing. For the ultimate, we then use Secluded Grove. This is just a healing ult for you and allies. Now, I will get asked, what about Sleet Storm? This is just a stun, snare, protection type thing. So what will happen is you use this, you stun people around you, you snare them, and you get major protection. This is no damage. As such, it's a defensive group skill. If you want to use this to push into enemies or stun people around you, use it for that. I personally prefer the heal. So you can change this as you see fit. All of the other options are not worth it in my opinion, because they just lack damage. Unless you're in group play, you can put on some of the group options. But that there is the Warden. It is a jack of all trades, master of none. We're then going to go and look at the Templar next, and what I would recommend using, the pros, the cons with the class itself, and yeah, I'm going to try to be as gentle with this as I can. So the Templar is a holy paladin. What that means is that it's designed to be in melee range and it's meant to be embracing the power of the light. Currently, in most modes, Templar plays as a more melee orientated class that is focusing on winning the battle of attrition, holding its ground and trying to stay alive. Why can it do this well is because it can heal itself, as it does this with lots of heal over times. The current changes, however, means this is not an option. So we're going to jump into the campaign in a second and I'll show you the skills and what I would recommend, but I will say that Templar is one of the weaker classes in my opinion, having played it on stream extensively, because it lacks mobility, it lacks access to heal over times, and the sustain is not great. So all in all, Templar does need a bit of a rework. The other thing that's also worth mentioning with Templar is that as a healer, it's not as good as you would think. Warden and Necromancer do this better. Sorcerer is also very good as well. So Templar doesn't have that, oh my goodness, it's the best healer out there anymore. It's good, but it's not amazing. For the skills, you have two ways to play this. You can go as a melee build with jabs and backlash. Jabs is jabs. It punches and strikes, it just hits people in front of you, but it does not heal you. Backlash is essentially Daedric Curse. It does a bit of damage, and after 6 seconds it does a lot of damage. So you can time this up with, you know, a crescent sweep, so radial sweep, and then a beam, and you've got a good chance of doing some burst. The problem is that you take so much incoming damage in this mode that you're often not going to survive in 2v1 or 3v1 unless you are kiting well, at which point you don't get to line this up consistently. We then have Focus Charge for the melee build. This lets you just gap close to them. It doesn't stun them though, so just do factor that in. We then have Sunfire. This is an optional skill with this melee build. If you use this, you have the damage over time, which is pretty good. Or you can go for Eclipse, which will give you a stun that you don't have currently. We then have Radiant Destruction, which is incredibly nasty. It hits really hard and it's got an execute. It is the best execute for this mode. What this means is that Templar becomes one of the best group builds to get kills. If you are fighting people and there's 2 or 3 of you and you hit beam on them, the odds are that you are going to kill them quite quickly if they get low health. We then have Radial Sweep, which is just a melee ultimate. On the back bar we have Rune Focus, which is our armor buff. We have Rush Ceremony, which is our self heal. We have Sun Shield, which gives us a shield and allies, so this is a bit of group utility. We have Restoring Aura, which gives us loads of regen buffs. And we have Cleansing Ritual, which cleanses some debuffs. With how few debuffs there are, I don't think this is particularly worth using, so you can change this if you wish. And then for the ultimate, I'd recommend either Nova as a group ult. It is one of the harder hitting ults in this mode. Or you can go with Rite of Passage, which will give you and ally some good healing, and it is worth considering. If you want to play this as the range spec, you simply change your jabs to Solar Flare, and then what you then do is you then change your toppling charge to Piercing Javelin, so this way you've got a range stun and you keep everything else the same. All in all, Templar is a bit lackluster and I wouldn't use this in all honesty. As with the healing, because I will get asked, you have a burst heal, a group heal which heals 3 people, and that is it. There is no other healing on this kit, and that means that it's really hard to stay alive because you don't have any passive healing. We're now going to go and have a look at the Necromancer. The Necromancer is another DLC class, so you do need to have the correct DLC for this. The Necromancer uses essentially corpse mechanics like death and decay to try and kill people. As such, it's pretty hit and miss. It uses the philosophy of the Warden, where it's a jack of all trades, master of none, with a bit more clunkiness to it. As such, it's one of the weirder damage dealers in this mode, and I would recommend avoiding this if you want to play as a damage dealer unless you are in a group, simply because you will lack the killing power to fight somebody 1v1 effectively, and that will give you a massive disadvantage versus any other class. What the Necromancer does good though is healing. It is one of the best healers for this mode at present, and so if you want to really double down as being a healer support build, Necromancer could be the best pick for you. I also want to stress that the skills have been changed quite drastically for this, so it is just worth almost forgetting what you know about Necromancer and going in with fresh eyes, because there are some significant changes. So with the Necromancer itself, I've tried to build this as a damage dealer. I've tried to go for a pseudo bursty playstyle, and we've had varying success in all honesty. So as I was saying, just go as a healer if you want to play this mainly with some off-hit damage. For the skills themselves, we have access to Flame Skull. This hits really hard. We have Detonate and Siphon. This is a pseudo burst execute skill. The problem with this though is you need to have a corpse in order to try and activate it. We then have Vengeance Gravegrass, which is a immobilized. It also reduces the people's damage done to you, so that helps. But this is again more of a group utility, and it can be good at times. We then have Skeletal Mage. This is a bit of a weird skill. We have to look at the target this time, and then a skeleton pops up behind them, hits them with a spell, leaves a corpse, and then it does damage over time. The way in which you use this is that you use this on the target to make a corpse next to them, and then you blow the corpse up. The problem is though that this has a 1 second delay, This also has a 1 second delay, that's 2 seconds, and people move away from the corpse, so you don't get any damage. We do have a stun, which is Bone Totem. This is more of a group stun. You put this down, anybody in the area then gets stunned after 2 seconds. The issue with this is that when you use this, what will happen is that you use this as a counter. So if someone pushes into you, you put this 2 seconds before they get to you, so then they get stunned when they hit you. As such, it's really awkward to use. The ultimate is incredibly good. You have Frozen Colossus. This hits for 12,000 each hit, and it hits 3 times, so it does a lot of damage and is very good in group play. We have Bone Armor as our armor buff. We have Rend Flesh, which hits really hard as a heal, but as I said with the heals earlier, it will target anybody. So if I look there, it will heal them, and if they glow blue, then they get the heal. What happens there then is that the person often gets a heal instead of you. We then have Expunge, which is just here as a passive regen boost. We don't really use this, but the extra sustain is nice. We then have Sacrificial Bones, which is a 10% damage boost, and it does create a corpse. What's good with this is that when you cast this, the buff is on you straight away. So it doesn't need to hit you. You can roll dodge, cast, and still get the damage boost. So this is just a passive damage boost. We then have Spirit Mender, which is a heal over time. You get a ghost on your back that heals you. This is one of the better heal over times because very few classes have a heal over time, so this is still really good. We then have Bone Goliath, which basically gives you 70,000 health. It essentially resets your health bar, so if you're going to die, use this. If you want, you can go Reanimate. Reanimate is a bit hit and miss. I would avoid this personally, it's not worth it. As for the rest of the damage skills, you have obviously the AoE skill here for damage, but beyond that there isn't much else you can do with this set of skills and with the class itself. If you were to go more of a healery route, then you can use things like Life Amid Death, which is incredibly good. So this is an AoE that you can shut down. It heals you, it heals people inside it, it's really quick to cast, it's really cheap. So you can see that we could span this and get lots of group healing with this class. Add on our little ghost as well, and we've got some good healing going on now. Or you can go down the selfish route and then heal yourself. You then have Restoring Tether, which also heals allies. So the way in which this one works, which again is worth considering, when you cast this, it will then heal people in that circle. So if I put this here, and then I use the corpse, everybody gets hit. So this can be good, and they also get a additional buff too. So all in all, it's a pretty decent skill, and it does heal more of their lower health. The problem is it's just quite clunky to use. That there is the Necromancer. We then have 2 classes left to look at, which is the Dragonknight and then also the Arcanist. I'm going to go through and look at the Dragonknight, and then I'll wrap it up with the Arcanist before doing a very quick tier ranking based on how the classes feel, how they play, so that way you know what your class is going to be like when you go against other players. Also want to stress that obviously with a tier list, you know, there are tiers of those, so if you find something that's a bit upsetting, then it is what it is. We are on the Arcanist, so we'll go through and show the Arcanist first, and then the DK with that way around. So the Arcanist is a DLC class once again. It's the most recent one. You need access to Gold Road, to the Necrom chapter, and what this does is it uses the power of Apocrypha to do damage, to heal, and to just stay alive. It is an incredibly good class in PvP. Some of the issues that it used to have, they have actually fixed, to such an extent that it is one of my favourite classes for this test, and I will probably be using it going forward. With the skill options, you have a few. Again, there are a few ways to play it, but in all honesty, the setup that I'm going to show you was the most successful, and you also have a lot of group utility with this. So this makes this a really good all-round class. It's good at everything. It's got good mobility, it's got good damage, it's got good sustain, it's got good group buffs. It is a really good class. For the class itself, you want to use Rune Blades. This is your spammable. It hits once and it gives you Crux. Crux is a system that when you charge Crux, your skills do more damage or they're more potent. So we use Rune Blades for damage. We use Fate Carver as a burst skill, which sounds a bit weird. Now, I will get asked for people who play this class normally, what about the Abyssal Impact? This is more of crowd control and mobilize. So you could use this instead of Rune Blades if you want to go more melee. I would personally use Rune Blades and use Fate Carver. Fate Carver hits really hard. It ticks every 1 second. If you get more Crux, it does almost double damage. And on top of this, it actually hits people. So when you first cast this, it will hit them straight away on that as soon as you hit the cast button, and then a second later it will then hit them again, and a second later again. So what this means is that you'll get at least 1 hit of this, which is 18,000, which is like Deep Fissure or Curse. So this becomes a really good burst skill. And then if you can stun them, you can normally get 2 or 3 hits, at which point you'd get bonus damage. We then have the Imperfect Ring, which is a damage over time, so it's a dot. We then have Eldritch Horror. This is a delayed stun, so we throw this on somebody and a second later they are stunned. This works really well with the Fate Carver. We charge the Rune Blades 1, 2, 3. We go for the dot, we go for the stun, we go for the beam. What will happen here is they'll be stunned, they'll at least hit with 1 of these, maybe 2 of these. At that point they've taken a lot of damage and you can use this as an execute. We then have access to Apocryphal Gates. This has been redefined and remade for this mode. So when you cast this, it is now a teleport light streak. It is incredibly good with a 3-second cooldown and it's instantaneous. As such, this gives you a lot of mobility versus other classes. So this is incredibly good for just fighting. We then have the Unblinking Eye, which is an ultimate. It summons a tentacle monster that attacks people, and with the changes here, it can't be dodged. It follows them even if they streak, even if they teleport away. This means this is very powerful. If you line up your 3 Crux, you then summon the monster, which takes about a second to summon, and then you do the rune and then the beam. At that point, they'll have this laser going on them and this laser going on them, and you'll kill most people. It is a lot of burst really, really fast. Defensively, we use Fate Woven Armor for Crux, and it just gives us more defense. You can hit people with this for minor breach, but they need to be near you. As such, don't really use this as a debuff unless you're really trying to reduce their armor. You then have Runespike Ward, which is a big shield, and if you have Crux, you then get some healing from this too. We then have Remedy Cascade. This is a heal over time that you have to channel. It heals you and allies, and it is a pretty good heal. It's lots of healing really fast. So this is a really good skill. We then have Bearer's Inspiration. When we do this, we get Minor Force, which increases our crits, which is great. And then whilst we have it on our bars, we get Major Prophecy, which increases our crit chance. So this is more of a passive buff, and if you use this, you can then also get bonus critical damage. We then have Arcanist Domain, which gives us loads of regen boosts and also a damage boost. This also works for groups as well, so this is a really good skill. For the ultimate, we then have Vitalizing Glyph. This basically is a big heal over time for people nearby. This is really good for when you push through doors and keeps, and it helps keep you and allies alive, especially if you use the Remedy Cascade, or you could simply teleport through the door. Weapon wise, I would use staffs if you want, but you can use any weapon because this works incredibly well. As I said, staffs personally are the best choice, so Inferno and Bow, or Lightning Staff, or Restoration Staff. I personally would go with Inferno and Restoration Staff, as you can heavy attack for resources here for damage, but also heavy attack and get resources, and they can't dodge this one here. Beyond that, there is not any other way to play an Arcanist damage dealer, so this is the best setup. And as a healer, you have access to so many heals and so many buffs that anything will work. So Arcanist is by far the best all-round class. We've got one class left to look at, which is the Dragonknight, and this is a base game class which comes with just the game itself. This is a class that's all about trying to hold the ground and win the battle of attrition. What this means is that it's trying to damage people over time, and as a result, you drain people of their resources, their life, and then they die. The pros of this is that when used well, you have lots of sustained damage, which means people who run away do take a good amount of incoming damage, so they have to spend a lot of their resources to try and stay alive from that, which again feeds into that more draining their resources and trying to win that battle over time. The downside with a Dragonknight, similar to Templar, is it has no mobility. This means that you are really vulnerable if you make a mistake or you get yourself just in a wrong place or you get caught unprepared. As such, there's a good chance that you will die on this quite quickly if you are running solo or in a very small scale. I would say that DK, from my testing, is one of the weaker classes in all honesty, so just do factor that in if you do go down this route. It is made, in my opinion, for more of a group role where you're working with other players to try and do well. Skill wise, I've gone through loads of different variations of this to try and make this work, and there isn't many options. For the damage, we want to use Lava Whip, which is just your spammable. You have Searing Strike, which is a damage over time, and Fiery Breath, which is also a damage over time. For our stun, you have two choices. I would personally recommend using Fiery Grip. This cannot be dodged or reflected. What this means is that if someone rolls, you can hit them through the roll and pull them to you. If you're in any kind of group or just with other players nearby and you use this, there's a very high chance you'll get a kill because they can't heal whilst they're being pulled to you, which is a massive advantage. It also has a really good range and it helps close the distance if people are too far away from you. Alternatively, you could go and run Petrify, which will stun them even if they are blocking or dodging. So this is a really good stop, stand still, and allows you to hit them. We then have a flex spot here, which is Inhale. Inhale is like a delayed burst heal. I have played around with different skills, but I found this was the most effective for this playstyle and is what I would recommend. When you cast Inhale, after 3 seconds, it then explodes and does damage. What you're trying to do with this is to cast this whilst the dots are on them, and then when it's about to explode, to then use our Leap ultimate, which will jump in the air and damage people, and then to whip them. If you have them on CC and you can stun them, you can then do the same combo with the dots with the Inhale, chains, leap, whip, and then that will give you burst and a good amount of damage. If you don't like that, you can change the Inhale to other skills such as Burning Talons or Dark Talons. This does instant AoE damage around you and immobilizes. The immobilize is a bit awkward though, so it's a good skill, but just I personally found the damage was more useful. If you want to drop one of the dots, that is an option too. For the bat bar, you are wanting to use Spiked Armor, and then Dragon Blood is your burst heal. Obsidian Shield is a shield for you and allies. Inferno gives you Major Berserk, which increases your damage, and Protective Scale means you take less range damage for 6 seconds, which is really strong. For the ultimate, we have Magma Armor, which reduces all damage that comes into you to 3% for 10 seconds, so this helps you stay alive should things go wrong. I do find personally that the DK lacks a bit of healing power currently with the setup, so you may want to consider running Ash Cloud instead of Obsidian Shield. It heals you and allies, it is also quite cheap. The only issue is you have to look down like this, so for that reason I chose to go with Obsidian Shield simply because you can use this whilst you're moving. This does hit allies too. You might be wondering, what about Molten Weapons? It hits you and allies with Minor Prophecy, increasing your crit chance by a little bit. It's good, but it's not essential. You might be wondering, can you do this as a range build? And the answer is no. You have a range spammable, which is Stonefest. It hits hard, it interrupts people, which is the only skill in this mode that does that. The problem is none of your other skills are ranged, so you are really forced to then use the dots in melee, and then stunning them and then trying to just out sustain them. That does mean you are very vulnerable if you get interrupted by other players who would then try to kill you. All in all, the DK I found was one of the harder classes to stay alive on, as with the Templar, and so I'm just going to give people a heads up that they are difficult to use. Now with all the classes covered, I want to go through and I want to show you the tier list. So I've been working on a tier list and we're going to go through it together. This is what I have come up with so far. Now with these things you might notice that they are open to subjects and people's views, so this is what I would just suggest based on what I've seen and used so far. Starting with Arcanist. Arcanist is A tier. This is by far the best. If you want to go and do incredibly well, just go with A tier. Arcanist is your go-to. I would also put Sorcerer up at A tier, but not A+. So Arcanist is slightly better than Sulk, in my opinion. Sulk is the best single target. Arcanist is the best all-rounder. These are both really good classes. I would then say that Nightblade is up there with Sorcerer. If there was a B+, Nightblade would be kind of, low A, high B is kind of around here. It's a really good class. It just doesn't have many ranged options, so it's very one-dimensional. And with what it does it okay. So it's it's in the middle between here and here. We then have Warden and Necromancer. Warden is C tier. It is a good class. It's high C, low B. So it's kind of around this area here, and Warden's kind of between these, depending on how you use it. Healer, Warden's up to A. If it's a damage dealer, it's down to B, even C. So based on that, I'll put it low B, high C, so I'm going to put it around here. Templar, in my opinion, if you're going as a damage dealer, it is a C. It is a really bad damage dealer. The only reason it's here is because of the execute. If it didn't have the execute, it would be down at F. It is really bad. If you are playing as a group play build, maybe B, because the execute is very, very good. But Templar is one of the weaker classes in my opinion. Dragonknight is F. It is the worst one out of all these. The only saving grace is the chain skill, which means you can pull people who are trying to run away from you and your group. Beyond that, it is naff. We then have Necromancer, which I would say, based on these so far, it's around as good as a Templar. It's probably slightly better for healing than a Templar, but it's worse for damage. For group healing, it's one of the best healers. For solo healing, you're Warden. So Necromancer is kind of between the C and this B. Now obviously with the tier list, I know some people might agree, some people might disagree, but that's where I stand based on playing this for the past 6 hours or so and just really trying the game, seeing what works. But yeah, I know this video is quite long as it is, so I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm just going to say a massive thank you to everybody that likes, comments, shares and subscribe. And I also want to just say a massive word onto Zoz. What they have been able to do with the performance is incredible. It is so much better than it's ever been. And the actual gameplay, although there's issues, it's rough around the edges by quite a lot, in all honesty. It is a really good foundation to work from. And I hope they explore this further and how they can refine this to make this more of the Battlegrounds type system, or even Cyrodiil. That said, I'd love to know what you think. Do you agree or disagree? And more important, if you want to see more gameplay, there's a 6-hour stream on the channel, so do check it out if you want to see what is it actually like in PvP with these changes. As always, I'm going to say a massive thanks to everybody who has watched so far and just subscribed and likes and comments. It really helps. And a bigger thank you to every over at Patreon and on YouTube members who do support. If you want to support myself there and get early access, exclusive content and much more, there's details down below. But until the next video or stream, thanks for watching, take care, and bye!